Let me introduce to you the Bluelab Ph Controller. It's one of my favourite meters in our range. This is designed mainly for hydro systems, or any system where your pH is consistently going up or down. And what this will do is you set in here the desired pH, and it will maintain it within 0.05 pH of that target. So we have some clients who are doing drain to waste systems, where they're aerating their nutrient tank and their nutrient tank pH is always rising, and they use a Bluelab Ph Controller to stabilise it. So what you do with this is you set the target pH, so 5.8 for example, and like the Guardian, you can also set high and low alarms. And those alarms are really in case something goes wrong. Maybe you run out of acid, maybe you've got a blockage somewhere. So the high and low alarms are in case something goes wrong. It's not the range which it measures to. If you set the target pH of 5.8, it'll keep it to 5.8. It'll go up to 5.85 and then bring it back down to 5.8. So it keeps it in a really tight range. It's controlled by a peristaltic pump. This is a Japanese-made medical-grade peristaltic pump. It's incredibly reliable. And if this ever fails, you just unscrew it and put it in a replacement unit. One of the other things that differentiates our pH controller from the competition is that you set an on time, which is how long it doses for. You also set an off time. So what this is designed to do is to measure if it needs to. It'll dose a little bit. It'll then wait for that acid to move in your tank. It'll then measure, dose, wait, measure, dose, wait. That way you never overshoot. Other pH controllers on the market will just add acid until it reaches the correct pH. But the problem with that is that acid is it's not properly mixed in the tank. So say it doses acid till it reaches 5.8. By the time the tank is mixed, you're now looking at 5.4. When you're growing without a controller, you generally allow the pH to drift between 5.5 and 6.3. And that's perfectly acceptable for a plant. Plants are quite durable. And they also soak up different nutrients at different pH levels. What we found with the pH controller is that when you set it to a certain pH, there's no shock to the system, there's no shock to the plant. And the plant's able to kind of change its pH a little bit at root zone level, if it's in some kind of media, to absorb the different nutrients that it needs. So we did some research with the pH controller at the Center of Applied Horticultural Research in California. And what we did was we had one control which had no control over pH. We then controlled pH at various pHs, and then we also had a control pH that was way outside the range that plant wanted. And what we found was that the best growth came from the plant that had a stable pH. Even if that pH was outside of its normal range, it still had better growth than the control that was just allowed to drift. So one of the comments we also get is, why don't you do acid and alkaline? The reason is, in most hydro systems, DWC systems, traditional hydro, NFT systems, the pH will creep up. There's usually a period within the growing cycle where the pH does drop, but as a grower you'll know when that is. If the pH starts to drop any time outside of that normal period, that usually indicates you've got some kind of bacteria, some kind of Pythium problem in your root systems. And you really should know about that and treat about that rather than hide it with alkaline. So that's why we only dose in one direction, and the most common one is using acid. Setup of the pH controller is very simple. You bolts to the wall, and you have a piece of tubing that comes within the kit which you attach to these pipes. One end will go into your acid, the other end goes into your nutrient tank. The pipe is one piece of pipe, it's 4 meters long, you chop it in the middle to wherever you want it. It's very important that the outlet acid doesn't go into your tank. It needs to hover above your tank and drip into your nutrient solution. If it goes into your tank, you'll end up with the capillary reaction, which will suck some of your water and dilute the acid that's in the pipe. It also has a temperature probe. pH temperature is important for pH. It's more important for EC, but it is also important for pH. So it needs to compensate the pH reading for temperature. This also acts as an earth to your system. So for example, if you've got a rogue water pump that's pumping voltage not correctly earthed, that can affect the pH reading. So what this does is effectively ground the whole system in. You've also got your pH probe, which you need to put into your nutrient tank as well. The tubing on the pH controller is rated 85% phosphoric or 35% nitric acid. We recommend you use the weakest amount of acid that still affects change within your system for two reasons really. One is that using a strong acid is quite dangerous if you drop it onto your hands or your feet or wherever. Also, if you make a mistake on the time setting, on the on time, if you're using a stronger acid, if you overshoot, that's going to have a higher consequence than if you're using a weaker acid. So a weaker acid, it just allows you a little bit more freedom in a little bit more tolerance, I guess, in your settings. Okay, so I'm just going to run through very quickly how to set up the pH controller. It can seem quite daunting, but really what you're doing is you're setting a target pH, you're setting a high and low alarm in case something goes wrong, You're setting an on time, which is how much acid it's going to dose when it doses, and you're setting an off time, which is how long it's going to wait to allow the acid to mix, so that when you take a measurement and make another dose, you don't overshoot. So I'm going to go into mode here. The first one is monitor or control. So monitor means it's just monitoring. Control means it's monitoring and making a change. So I'm going to be making some changes. I'm going to be programming the meter, so always put it onto monitor. You don't want the pump kicking off and putting acid over you as you're making changes. So press it and save. And that's as far as the menu goes. You haven't got endless sub-menus. It's a simple choice. The next one is setting your pH. So I'm going to just press enter here. It tells you set required pH, so it always lets you know what part of it you're doing in case you forget. So I'm going to set my target pH to 5.8. Press enter, and it's saved. Do I want the alarm on or off? I'm going to have it on. The alarm is really there in case something goes wrong. It's not the range in which the pH controller will control within. It's in case maybe you've got a blockage, maybe you put into pH up instead of pH down. Maybe you had a few beers and it's in a can of Heineken, who knows. So I'm going to have the alarm on. And then you simply set the high alarm and the low alarm. So again, high alarm. We recommend you set the high and low alarm 0.3 above and below the normal fluctuations within your tank. So for argument's sake, mine's set to 5.8, so I'm going to set my high alarm to 6.2. Press enter, it tells you it's saved. And then you set the low alarm in the same way. So 5.5. I'm dosing up or down, so I'm going to be dosing down with acid. You can dose up with alkaline. But in most hydro systems, the pH is creeping up, so you want to dose down with acid. Then you have the on time and the off time. So the on time is in seconds, anytime anywhere between 1 and 60 seconds. I'm going to get a bit techie here for a second. This is the only kind of math bit you need to do. So this pump will do 12 millilitres in 60 seconds. So 1 second is 0.2 millilitres. So 1 second, 5 seconds is 1 mil. Okay? How you decide this is you make your pH to the correct pH that you want to be at. So in this case, 5.8. You then measure how much acid you need to add to move it down by 0.1. And you record that, so say it's 10 mil. We then divide that by 2 because we recommend 2 dosing cycles to change your pH to 0.1. So you want 2 doses of 5 mil. 2 doses of 5 mil. If it's 5 seconds for 1 mil, so we want to set the on time to 25 seconds. That's the end of the techie bit. GroWell can give you a chart which will explain that a lot easier for you. Okay, so I'm going to have my dosing time at 5 seconds, which is 1 mil. You then set your off time. This is anywhere between 1 minute and 59 minutes. And this is the time you think that the nutrients or the acid will take to mix in the tank. And with any kind of controller, you're only dosing the tank. So good water or bad water comes into the tank. Say your tank's, 250 litres. Bad water comes in, you alter the pH, good water goes out. It doesn't matter how much water you've got going around your system, it's really about how much is in your tank, and that's the part you're dosing. The only time that may change is if you've got one of these fast-moving DWC systems where the water's running around your system in, say, 5 minutes, in which time you set the off time to, say, 6 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to set my off time to 10 seconds. Pump override. When you connect the tubing to your pipe, you just press the down button, and that's just to get any air out of your tubing. You want acid to be dripping out. You're priming it, essentially. Then you've got backlight, contrast. 2 or 3 point calibration. You can calibrate to 3 points, but it's not really necessary. 7 and 4 is fine. You can do 10. Earthlink is the temperature probe. Have I got it on or off? And that's it. So it seems a bit complicated, but all we've really done is set the target pH, the high and low alarm, the on time and the off time. So you're happy with all the changes you've made. You set your target pH, your on time, your off time, and your high and low alarms. So you go into menu, you need to change it from monitor to control. Press enter, tells you it's saved. You have to press menu to get out of it. Gives you a 15-second countdown just in case you suddenly realise you've made a mistake. The alarm is showing, so the alarm is on, we're dosing down. The 7 and 4 is solid, so it's calibrated. That will last here for 30 days. When that disappears, it's time to calibrate again. The ATC is a temperature probe, that's all set up. We're in controlling mode, we're currently at 7.3, the target required pH is 5.8. It's monitoring, it knows it needs to make a change and it'll go for 5 seconds because we've told it to go to 5 seconds. And there you go. It will now wait for a minute because we told it to wait for a minute. Then it will measure, dose if it needs to, and then turn itself off to allow that acid to mix. If it reaches the required pH before the on time is done, it will also stop. If it does 15 cycles and doesn't see a change in pH, it will also go into alarm mode. So one of the biggest issues we have from customers is it's not working. So the first thing you need to do is this flashing? Because if this is flashing, it's in alarm mode. And if it's in alarm mode, it won't work. It would rather stop doing anything than keep on making a mistake.